It's at freedomslips.com. And you can go there and you can discuss the topics that we're talking about on air. And, we're in there too. So you're actually talking to us and other people. It's awesome. You can listen from there too. So if you're listening on a different radio, you can just, everyone's got the internet, so jump in and love it. It's great. The typical places that we listen to it. So if you're in the chat room, you can listen at the chat room. You can listen on many different ways, terrestrially as well in FM. But you can get an app, and that's what we do. We have apps. Revolution Radio has an app. You can listen via TalkStream Live, TuneIn.com. A lot of people do that. Radio Tuner as well, if you didn't know that one. Or you can get our app with the Shiny Side Out app. It's available on both platforms. Yeah, at home you can also listen on a Grace tabletop digital radio or driving around in a GM motor vehicle with a receiver-enabled radio. Except for the FM bit, you know what? All of those are revolutions in radio. I just love it. It is so easy, Noodles 53519. It really is. I'm responding to a chat room post. You know what? Here's something from the station. So you can donate money, but you get something in return. Not only do you get to listen to us, but you get to... And you live in the US, because if you live in Australia, you can't get a seat back, right? Won't let you in the country. You can purchase a CD of your favorite host or you can get a best of as well. They're available. And I recommend you get either of those and or both, or just donate money. Now, if you don't have a credit card, you can do it as a one-off payment. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do, and I recommend you do them all. The other thing we recommend you do is follow Meki and I on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Blogger. We've both got Blogger accounts as well. And do you know what? My sound... Oh, I don't know whose sound... What, my sound, Meki? Yes or no? Yes, he's nodding.
It's back to normal. Maybe just for me, guys, because we're not in the same location. There might be some sound bleed from the ether.
There could be. Who knows? But you know what? If you're in the USA, you can call in on 347-688-2902. I'm going to say it again. I love it. 02. That's the call-in number. Don't ring up and go and talk about something off topic. If we're talking about a topic, you're welcome to call in and you're welcome to discuss it with us. Okay? Now, I do know it's late. It's 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern, 11 to 1 Pacific, or in Australia, it's 4 to 6 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon. Very nice. But we're coming to America from the future. Aren't we, Meki?
From the future. We are in you tomorrow. You are in our yesterday. And just to elaborate, sorry, on something that Dave just said, if you have an exclusive, like if visitors have just landed in your backyard, or your house is broken through to the inner earth, call us even if it's off topic. Happy to take your call.
Oh yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yes. You're completely happy to take take it. But you know what? I just want to say that Solaris had a great show, and she was talking to. Now, I've actually got the name here because I'd forgotten, and I don't want to. Let me see. Yes, Sam. Is it Sam Baltrusis? Baltrusis. Did I
Close enough.
Yeah, it's got to be one of those. Yes. And they were talking about ghosts and things, weren't they, Meki? I liked it.
It was fantastic. The guy obviously is, is a trained journalist, and he's now investigating hauntings and such. It was very interesting. I didn't realize, and I guess we did only one show on this topic, ghosts, that is.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize, or cryptids. In fact, they talked about cryptids as well. I didn't realize just how haunted America is. I mean, it sort of inspired me. I had a little chat to Solaris just now to do maybe go around Sydney, Dave. I mean, there's a few ghost tours. Maybe we can go and stake it out and do a bit of an expedition into the paranormal, as it were, and to see if we can find any haunted places here.
Well, there is definitely a haunted place because we lived in one in Surrey Hills.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the lady was murdered.
Okay.
And on the day we moved in, she showed me what had happened. When my mum came to visit, she appeared for my mother, and my mum got a bit bored looking at this old lady sitting in the chair next to the fireplace, so she turned the chair around.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So just so she didn't have to see her for the week that she was there. That's kind of the thing we're talking about. So yes, Sydney is haunted. There's a whole bunch of really old buildings, but there's a couple of really eerie ones, Meki, and there's the children's hostel, where they took kids from troubled families in the olden days and just bunged them all together, and lots of stuff went on there. There's the down in Parramatta Park. There's the old asylum down there as well, which is great, and of course around the rocks in some of the
rocks, yeah, massive.
Yeah, and Woolloomooloo. So down on the harbour, Sydney Harbour, and that's the oldest colonised component of Sydney, and all sandstone buildings. And I tell you, there's an eerie feeling when you're down there. But it stands to reason that there'd be something going on. But for the most part, everywhere I've ever been where there's been haunted, someone has died on premises, on-prem, as we say in IT. So there's always been someone who's died on-prem, and as a result have decided to stay there, or didn't know they were dead, or haven't been assisted across whatever the bridge or path is, that they need to go. Who knows? Maybe they're waiting for someone to tell how they died. I don't know. So, Meki, have you got any news today?
Yes, sir. We have, in fact, we have a whole
gamut.
Plethora.
A plethora, not
gamut, a cornucopia. In fact, there's a whole bunch of stuff I quickly wanted to share with you guys. You might have heard of the UK pedophile scandal. They've named names now in 60 Minutes here in Australia, which is a very popular current affairs program, usually very mainstream, so I'm surprised they brought this, but they did bring it, and they named names. And I want to share some of the names here with you. Richard Kerr, who in fact helped put the program together, was interviewed there, and he was still afraid to name names, but he's named them here on online as well. And he went to King Cora, which was like a boys' home up in Ireland, and this is where all of these abuses have happened. And the people that took part in this were Lord Mountbatten, a cousin of the Queen, a great uncle to Prince Charles, chief of the defense staff from 1959 to 65, and then murdered by the IRA in 1979. Also, Sir Maurice Oldfield, or Morris Oldfield, director of the Secret Intelligence Service, better known as MI6. Sir Anthony Blunt, master of the Queen's Pictures, former officer in the Security Service, or MI5, who became a Russian spy. You might remember that from the 60s. Sir Knox Cunningham, Unionist, Ulster Unionist MP, parliamentary private secretary to Harold Macmillan, as Prime Minister and member of the Conservative Party's National Executive Committee, 1959 to 1966. Okay, now...
But Meki, they're all really prominent people.
Well, yeah, they're all dead. But yes, they are.
They were prominent.
Very much so. In fact, very close links to the royal family, clearly. In Lord Mountbatten, who in fact is a German as well, who, by the name of Battenberg, changed it in World War I or just prior for obvious reasons. But it's astonishing that this came out. And David Icke has been saying this for years. He's been saying, yeah, look, this pedophilia goes on. They kidnap children, they abuse them on a regular basis, and it is now come to light on mainstream media, which really surprises me, guys. It really does surprise me that it came out, but here it is. There's a movie in the works, and I forget the name of it. Watch for it. In the break, I will try to find and Google it, which will, I think, deals with Arizona Wilder's testimonies. It's a Hollywood movie, okay? So I'm going to try to find out what the title is for you guys, but that's on the horizon as well. So Dave, this could be another red herring to distract us from something else that's going on, specifically because all of the accused are dead. But it's certainly, I would be astonished if that kind of culture of organized and highly connected at the top levels, pedophilia, simply stops. I would suggest that this is an ongoing problem. It just probably moved, to a different location.
Yeah, it reeks of Illuminati kind of activities, and this is what it doesn't surprise me that the Illuminati would be doing things that aren't what the mainstream do, because they have all the power and none of the responsibility.
Oh,
So,
completely.
and they can get away with it, clearly. So,
Yes, sir. Yep.
one of the things that I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention is the kind of ownership of companies. And this is only one example, only one, and Meki and I know about this one, but I'm just going to say it again because I think it's really important. The powerful nature of the stats that I'm about to give you is very important. Okay? 1,500 newspapers, 1,100 magazines, 9,000 radio stations, 1,500 TV stations, and 24 additional publishers are all owned by only 6 corporations.
Yep. There's no problem with that, Dave. Surely, nobody would abuse this kind of power, right? Of course not, Mackie.
Oh, that conversation from a troll was crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
And he was a journalist, right?
Yeah.
So,
And he said that doesn't happen. Yeah, well, it does, and we laughed about that montage from done by one of the outlets, the comic outlets. The montage of the same script being read by at least 30 different outlets. So yeah, extraordinary.
yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to put that out there because I think that's extraordinary. Meki, what other news stories?
Well, no, hopefully it's not noise. Look, there's a number of connected news stories. They all have to do with outer space, guys. And Dave can go into some detail into those. But we discovered Kepler 452b, 452b, which is one of the exoplanets most like Earth. They say slightly bigger and so forth, but the most like Earth that we found up to this point. We've also last week or 2 weeks ago increased the search for SETI, or extraterrestrial life or
Russian
intelligence.
billionaire.
Correct, and this is now massively increased in funding, supported by Stephen Hawking, and of course we have just passed Pluto, so there's a whole bunch of stuff related to space in my mind, and I spoke to this about my brother and to Dave as well. This is in a way, I think, getting us ready, or prepping us, if you will, or priming us even better, for disclosure of some form or other, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff happening, and I think there are going to be massive crises coming our way. And I think that this is, it might be planned as a distraction, but I think we will also get some true information out of this disclosure. So people are talking a lot more about, life is, we're going to find extraterrestrial life. It's going to happen very soon. We increased SETI. And when we do find it, it'll just be because, of course, we have increased the funding. Nonsense in my mind, but be that as it may, because the funding is still too small to watch the entire sky. However, we can also want to quickly touch on Fermi's paradox. It's not a paradox. Okay, because we can't look at this from it's not. We can't look at this from an Earth point of view. So any civilization, look at our own development. Okay, so in the last 100 years we've come a long way. In the last 50 years we've come a long way. In the last 1,000 years we've come an unimaginable way. So any civilization out there which is not completely in sync with us, okay, will either be way behind us or way in front of us from a technology point of view. Because we know how quickly technology moves once you have it, right? And we are now exponentially increasing our knowledge and our technical abilities. Using our tech to try to find civilizations or communicate with civilizations that are maybe 1,000, maybe 1,000,000 years ahead of us is complete nonsense. When people say, where's everybody? Then, it's based upon human perception of what the life should be like. We have created 3 levels of civilization, 1, 2, and 3. The first level of civilization uses all the energy on the planet. Effectively, we're not there yet, and stage 3 actually lives inside a Dyson sphere, and clearly, that's what we think as humans should happen. Other intelligences, other alien, extraterrestrial life forms might have completely different ideas as to what we should do, right? Even on this planet, excuse me, arguably, we've got dolphins that are as smart as us, elephants, and some other species, certainly, the octopi and such. They don't do what we do. They could. They're probably more adept than we are. And an octopus doesn't need an opposable thumb. He's got 8 tentacles, which are very good at manipulating very, very fine things, better than us, in fact, at manipulating reality. So So even on this planet, intelligence comes in many different forms, in my opinion. And to expect that intelligence out there in the universe would conform to what we term as stage 1, 2, and 3 of civilization and development, and then asking ourselves, well, where is everybody? It's a complete, as I said, nonsense. I'm sorry, right? There's no paradox. Where's everybody? They're there, but maybe they don't want to be seen, or maybe they're communicating on a level we don't understand, or they've all moved to the Magellan Cloud. I don't know. Okay, maybe we are just a zoo, Dave, right?
Completely. So if you imagine if we went back 40 years and we've just invented analog communication to each other, say 70 years, yeah? So we just discovered FM. Now, I know the Germans had done that and were communicating via FM transceivers in their tanks. That changed war. But if we hadn't done that, if we were just sitting around talking and we'd made FM, so now we're going to instantly presume that every other life form in the entire universe is using FM to talk as a medium. So not true, right? That's not going to be the case. So what is the case? Well, as we described before, it doesn't matter what our current technology is. It's more or so best described as whatever they're using, because we don't know where they are. Mekki and I, we talked about, as soon as we discovered quantum theory, we had a look at this. And if you have a single photon trapped in a magnetic field, I'm going to have to do this visually, so hang on one sec. So if you have an XYZ field, and when you talked, because everything's like a sine wave, so digitally you could make it oscillate in a vertical frame of reference when you speak. When the person at the other end with a quantum entangled particle or photon in their magnetic field spoke, it could go in the XY, along the X-axis, and you speak on the Y-axis, and then you could have data on the Z-axis, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the moment, we don't know how two photons are entangled. We don't know what method of transmission that they transmit their thing on, and I've come up with this thing, right? So I don't even know how it works, but it would be completely possible to produce it. And therefore, if no one can detect how they do it, we'd never hear them talking. It would make the universe invisible to communication traffic. And therefore, the whole thing about listening for life using radio waves is really only, if you look at how long, if you say you said, okay, we've been in civilization this time around, Mekki, if you wouldn't agree, say so, for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Right? So just give or take a little while, right? But even if you said 5,000 years, it doesn't really make much difference. It just halves the final percentage. But if you said for that 70 years that we've had radio signals going and that's it, so 70 years of the 2000 isn't very much. And we're about to turn all of that off pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah, we've gone now to encrypted digital signals. And with fiber, we won't need to transmit it any longer. And what if we went straight from the production of television signals and FM or radio, whatever it is, into, say we were smart enough to make it encrypted to begin with, and then over a fiber optic link? We would never, ever have transmitted any radio waves. We would have skipped that and moved on somewhere.
Yep.
Maybe it was a war that pushed us in that direction, and I don't want to take up any more time on this, but so pointing lasers, this is one of those, the escalations, the cost, the budget that's been injected into this search for extraterrestrial intelligence has included now lasers and more deep listening of what's going on in the cosmos. But pointing lasers at them, that might just make them really angry.
Don't poke the bear.
Yeah, don't poke the bear. Don't do that kind of thing, because they're listening to Hitler right now, maybe.
That's right. That's right.
Right,
Oh,
the first...
guys, send an attack fleet quickly now.
Quick. Yeah, we've seen those kind before. Yeah. they'll see all the movies we've ever made and think maybe it's true or maybe it's the news. I don't know. But look, if you were to write a science fiction, I don't think you could do it any better. I think maybe, and it's never turned out well for the native inhabitants.
No, it hasn't.
However, the lower of the technological societies, the two societies that have met, the lower one never fares well.
That is true.
So making a lot of noise right now. Are we ready for it? We've spoken to people, Meki, who have said that the governments have now got technology in place to defend themselves against their technology. So maybe they feel as though they're a little bit more comfortable advertising our location, but maybe it's just like Star Trek. They don't want to come near us until we're spacefaring.
Yeah, or civilized.
So
whichever comes first.
It will be a long way before civilized. But then obviously, abductees, contactees, people have seen things flying around. They can't all be military, and some of those even occurred before there was any humans in the air flying around or anything. So, my thoughts are they're already here, and that all of this is just a puppet show for the media.
Yeah.
That's it.
It is. Well, look, it could be, right? It could very well be. Like it just bothers me, like I said, that we look at everything from our point of view. Of course, we have to do that because we don't know another point of view. But we should not make the mistake of assuming that's the only point of view that can exist. Now, on a brighter note, though, we did discover the massless whale fermion particle. Why is that good? Because, well, it was only hypothesized about, right? And in fact, for the first time in 1929 by Herman Whale, which whom they're named after. Now, initially they were incorrectly identified as neutrinos, but they're not. In fact, they have no mass, right? Which is very interesting. And why is this important? Because the fermions are very stable. Okay, and they will also interact with other fermions, other whale fermions, which means they're staying on the same, at which point they collide and everything changes. However, this means that, for example, they can carry charge for long distances, right, without getting scattered or creating heat, like electrons, for example, right? Forget about AC/DC, right? If we can use whale fermions to transport electricity, it'll just be until the end of time without any energy loss. It's fantastic. Now. And Zahid Hassan, who's the co-author and a professor at Princeton, says that the physics of the whale fermion are so strange, and there could be so many things arising from this particle that we're just not capable of imagining right now. Now, its unique properties could make it incredibly useful for electronics, for example, right? Including the development of a quantum computer. Okay, they can create massless electrons because clearly they have no mass, and therefore the consequence. It would be that these electrons become more efficient. Okay, it's almost like they have their own GPS and they can steer themselves without scattering. Keep your eyes peeled for the whale fermion. I predict either we will hear nothing about it anymore.
Because it's been sucked into military application.
Yes, sir. Or we will hear a lot about them, right? So the graphene we're hearing a lot about. The anti-gravity cars we heard nothing about after some brief honeymoon period in the 50s. Whale fermion. I suggest that you guys keep your finger on the pulse on this one. Dave, I know you want to talk about the BRIC states as well, but I'm really curious as to what happens in Texas. Any listeners from Texas, if you're in the chat room, please let us know or write in. How is Texas going with launching a gold-backed bank, which would challenge, in fact, the Federal Reserve? And Dave and I had a discussion on this. Well, I mean, just elucidate the people around BRICS as well, Dave.
Yeah. Okay. So BRICS is basically in competition. So I suspect would be the Texas gold standard in competition with the Rothschilds. And Meki and I, like we talked about this, we don't know really who the winner would be. But BRICS, because obviously there'd be that's competition. And I don't think the Rothschilds are quite used to competition. The BRICS Bank is the China-based bank. Now, which countries, Meki, were on board with them?
Yeah, that's Brazil, Russia, India, and in fact China. So it's BRICS, BRIC.
Yes,
Those guys.
and so this was meant to be a gold-based backed currency loan generation. And so they'd be able to lend money out to those countries, the partner countries, or anyone else, and that would be for. It was described as being based for infrastructure and the building of your infrastructure. Whether that ends up being limited to and only for those purposes is something else. But it really doesn't that fly in the face of the existing banking infrastructure, Mekhi?
Oh, completely. It's a direct challenge, and as you pointed out prior to the show to me, is that in fact we are looking at a banking war, if you will, or war between the banks.
Now, Mekhi and I both but also postulated that who and how would we know when it was won?
We would never know.
Exactly. So we don't know how it would be fought. We don't know anything about it at all. Now they're talking about the IMF, Mekhi. That's the IMF model.
Yes.
And well, yeah. Except there's insurance based around the IMF, and it's CDSs, credit default swaps, and look at the I think it's called CDO. That's credit default credit something obligation. It's the ability for that place to be able to repay the money, and a lot of loans given out by the IMF, the people hadn't. They had a rating of 0.
Yeah.
So they were still lending money to people who they knew couldn't pay it back, which is basically bankrupting the country, intentionally.
Sorry, I just
Take
thought
it.
of something. There's a great new show out, and I don't really plug anything on TV unless I really, really enjoy it.
Uh-oh.
It's called Mr. Robot, and there's an excellent quote in there. It's a quote that you might have heard already. I will talk about the show in a second because it's very pertinent to what we're talking about right now. If you give a man a gun, he can rob a bank. If you give a man a bank, he can rob the planet. It's so true, isn't it? It's true. It's true. Banks have been robbing us blind from the time they've been conceived. Now, this show, Mr. Robot, is about this I guess, schizophrenic, autistic, slightly autistic hacker type who works as a cyber security analyst for a company and follows him around, and then his involvement with a group that wants to bring about the end of banks. Christian Slater is in it, and a whole bunch of other interesting characters that actors that is. And I'm surprised they're airing it because it cuts very close to the bone, guys. It cuts very close to the bone. It accuses the banks of all kinds of corruption, of all the things, in fact, we know are true. So this show is as far as I'm concerned, a documentary. Okay, it's a reality show, reality TV, and I do highly recommend it if you have the time to tune in. And it is touching on all the things we've just discussed here, and they want to bring about the end of banking, through very refined hacking and so forth, and all the hacking that you do see. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, Dave, but all the screenshots, it's all real. Okay, it's all Unix and Linux and so forth commands that you would use if you were a true cyber security administrator.
Oh, they actually had tech input into the show. Yes. Wow, that's completely, unusual.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it is very unusual. Sorry, that's all I wanted to say. But so we are looking at a war which we will never know the outcome of, as Dave has just outlined. We will know it though to some extent if nothing changes. If we are keeping on the way, on the same course, on the same track as we have been for the last, I don't know, let's call it 5,000 years, then we know that the others the others won. Having said that, we don't really know if either side is worthy of our support. Right? If Stalin was fighting Hitler, who would you support? Really? I mean.
Yeah, that's right. There isn't a third choice. Mekhi, they just mentioned the International Bank of Settlements, the IBS.
Yeah.
And this is I talked to Mekhi before the show in our pre-show meeting and about the TPP and all the other. They're meant to be investor investor protection mechanisms so that companies don't get are still able to pay their investors, their backers. And these agreements go in place in countries, and they're really there to protect, like I said, the investor. So there was a great example of this, and it was, say, a gold mining company wanted to go into a country, and the country was in favor of gold mining, so the investors got on board and they funded it, and they were able to put, like, maybe say a $5 million research project into where they could drill. They got the permits to drill, but then the people said no. In that country, the people said no. Now, what would that happen? What would happen to the investors? They'd lose their money. Yeah, but the protection mechanism allowed that company to sue the country for the entire wealth that they could have dug up. They weren't given permission. The government was on this people's side and said, okay, the people said no. And just like fracking, Meki.
Yes, sir.
Yep, they said yes initially. Then the agreements got in place, and then suddenly, that's it. You can't frack anymore because it's bad for the groundwater. And then what happens is the investors get paid, everyone gets paid. The company never dug one bit of soil up after their research, and they walked away with enough money then to do whatever they wanted. It was almost a setup. Now, when you're looking at the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, we're looking at a very similar thing, where if, for instance, if there was a really expensive medicine, and it was a trial medicine approved in some countries, but not in ours, and they wanted to push it in with the TPP laws, they'd be able to sue our government for the loss of revenue because they haven't approved the drug to be sold. And in fact, if the government says, yeah, look, we'll sell it, but you've got to sell it for half price, they'll sue our government for the rest of that money. Wow. If our government allows a very similar product to be pushed into our country from a non-TPP member, the TPP member will be able to sue our government for competition.
So what you're saying to me, Dave, is that you can never win. The companies could never lose, right? The companies can't lose. That's what's written into the agreement, and I implore everyone to have a look at it, because it shouldn't be like that at all. The companies should just get whatever they get. Yeah, whatever they can. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If they can rummage through and scrummage and do all the things except for cheat and steal, except for lie, cheat and steal, they're the bad things. If they can't lie, cheat and steal, and then lawsuit their way into profit, then I'd be happy, because they're trying to sell it. They make it. I'm sorry, I'm going to start ranting. I'm stepping down, but except for they shouldn't be allowed to sell stuff that isn't food. Let's put it that way. End of rant. No, hey, good rant. Good rant, and necessary as well. I think that we highlight all of this, especially the fact that these companies can never lose. I mean, what's the point of it all, right? I mean, the point of true change is that you actually change something. I know that sounds like a nonsensical statement or like a tautology, but it's not. Change is meant to bring change, and most what we've seen in the past, change just brings more of the same. Okay, we cannot expect change to come from the top because they're comfortable. Change can't come from the bottom because they're not angry enough yet. So the change must come from us, the ones that can afford to think about this, that can afford to take action. So Dave and I are in the process of starting a party in Australia. We talked about it last time. Let's Fix Australia is the Facebook page, so if you want to get involved, come and join. Anyone can join. It's a public forum. I've put down some thoughts. I can't implicate Dave quite yet because he hasn't read it. I don't know. But so come and have your say. Not just Australians. Anybody else who wants to get involved can do it as well. This could be a bigger than Australia movement, of course. But there's do we have any more news today, Dave?
Well, I was going to say, if you could ask me, read the line that I typed to you.
Ah, let me see. Where are we? Ah, what's in the agreement, Dave?
In what agreement, Mackie?
In the TPP agreement?
Well, nothing in the TPP is public.
Oh, well then, how do we know?
How do we know what's in it? Because
Yeah.
there was a cover page, I think, and that was all it was. There was leaked, a couple of leaked pages, but for the rest of it, it's against the law to know what's in it.
It's against the law.
We're not allowed to know. We're not allowed.
Sorry.
It's all completely private. It's not between the people. It's between the companies and the countries.
I'm sorry, but the country is me.
No, not in
Yes.
not in the TPP. It's not.
Okay, so see, like companies and corporations are a legal entity. I get that, and it's not a representative of the people within it. That's cool. I got no problem with that, right? That's just something we did ourselves, and now we have to live with it. However, a country, yeah, while abstract, an abstract, entity, if you will, is made up of its constituent members, which are called citizens. Citizens. We are citizens of a country. The government only exists at our pleasure. At our pleasure to serve us, or ideally that's what should happen. So if you're telling me that there's an agreement in place between certain corporations, which that's fine, they're privately owned, whatever, and countries which are not privately owned, oh well.
Actually, no. I think you'll find that they've actually got their own company. From what I heard and what I've read, most even states and especially of the US is actually a registered company.
Really?
Yeah, so they can trade as a registered company.
Okay, so we are all just then assets of the
Absolutely.
company, correct? That's why we no longer have a personnel bureau in the company. We have a human resources bureau. It's true.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
human, yeah.
It's we're a resource.
I know I sound flippant and we're playing devil's advocate, but that's actually shocking if you really think about it, right?
It is. I don't understand why the TPP isn't transparent. Why isn't it transparent? Why don't they just say, okay, we're just going to stop all duty and taxes? That's it. Why don't they do that?
Yeah.
And why do you
No, the
think
thing
why do
is
you think the GST is going to be put onto all purchasable items over the internet?
But the thing is, that's nothing. But why hasn't the mainstream media, Dave? Why haven't they picked up on this? This is a big story, I think.
It's a big story, yeah. And every time they mention it, they're so tight-lipped they can't say anything.
Huh. So, in light of that, do we think now, guys, that maybe the story about the British pedophiles, who are all dead, about the increased search for extraterrestrial life, which was necessary, the flyby of Pluto, could all be things just to distract us?
Oh, completely. Do you know we flew by Pluto twice before, right?
I know. When did Viking leave the solar system? Not Viking.
Yeah, there was Viking Voyager
Yeah?
1 and 2.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, hey. Ah.
And so the original two passes out of the solar system were to go on either side of where that heavy body was supposed to be that was affecting or causing perturbations in the outer planets. But none of those findings were ever revealed to the public. Remember, NASA is not a public agency,
No, it's not.
and so anything it finds, it's definitely not allowed to tell the public. And when I heard, this big announcement, NASA's got a big announcement, everyone pricked up their ears and they go, we found a planet. It's 1,400 light years away. 1,400 light years. It means if we shine a laser at it, they'll receive the laser light in 1,400 years.
That's correct.
Yeah, so we better start yesterday, hey?
In 3,000 years, if we're lucky, they might send a reply.
Yeah, that's right. If we're still around and we have documentation that says that we did it then, because otherwise there's just going to be some kind of light coming from somewhere, and you go, Hey, what's that thing? I don't know. Who cares? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Meki, was there anything else? Because look, the people in the chat room are talking about the TPP,
Yeah.
and
No, I think it's a very important topic. And I'm glad that you brought it up. We can talk a little bit more about that. But as far as news are concerned, I think we've covered everything.
yeah, cool. Do you know what? Because this is show number 178.
870 and 100. That's right.
100. Yeah.
22 shows to 200.
Yeah,
Which
that's
is
amazing,
not that,
Meki.
not that far. We hit 200 before Christmas?
Give me a second, I'll calculate it.
I think it'd be very close, right? I think it'd be very close.
Yeah, yeah, I think we will because it's 52 per year.
Yep. We should endeavor to do show number 200 from the same location.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
4 years on the air, we've never ever sat in the same room to do the show. We've been
Ever.
separated by oceans and continents,
That's right.
but never ever have we rubbed shoulders.
No, and when we hit, obviously it'll be 210 shows when we've finalized year 4, which we're still in.
Yeah.
But I think because 10 weeks prior to May, I think we might be right around that. Right around the New Year's time.
That'd be awesome.
Completely.
So watch out for show number 200 coming your way.
Oh, very nice. Yes. Now, if everyone can remember last week, we were talking about the physical evidence of the Great Flood.
Yes, correct, sir. And because we had a number of shows around this, and this is the second time around we've done this because we lost the first shows. The archives were deleted. So this is a rerun, an updated rerun. We've got a lot more information in this show cycle than we had before. So this is now the physical evidence for those floods. And I just want to quickly disclaimer that we're going to talk about this some more, but very, very quickly. And then we won't have time today to talk about the critics, but it's important that we get this out before we start. We're not saying that we're proponents of the biblical flood story of Noah, the ark, to getting all the animals in there, then being on the water and then coming up on Mount Ararat. That's not the purpose of this show, or the show cycle. It's not. This is about the catastrophe that we think was quite real, maybe 12,000 years ago, or maybe another one 7,000 years ago, where we think a major comet or major impactor disrupted the last ice age. Caused massive melts, caused earthquakes, rain of fire, and the legends around that. So, in all the critique we found, all the debunking is honed in, focused on Noah's flood account. That's what they all, the Rational Wiki, all of them, they all focus on that. Don't care. Waste of time as far as I'm concerned. We're talking about an event that science is now, and this is hopefully we can get to that today, that is now agreeing with has happened. There's evidence for it. We're not talking about the Earth being covered in water entirely. I think that notion of a water world is foolish, because I just don't think there's enough water to cover, or the entire Earth, completely, right? And maybe there is, but I just don't think that's a likely scenario. What we are talking about is an event where comet, meteor hit the Earth massively, right? It caused tsunamis, which led to flooding. Also caused for temperatures to rise, earthquakes, volcano eruptions. The glacial lakes broke, and that caused more flooding yet. Okay, and other catastrophic events in line with that. So please do not confuse this show cycle with a case for Noah. It's not.
It isn't. No, Meki's right. It isn't.
Okay, so without further ado, though, sir, can you tell us about the effects of the impact that we think had on the then existing civilization?
Yeah, sure. This is it's something that we could look forward to should we also result in an impact, and that's why we're doing this show cycle, is so we can understand the quantity of impact, how much it would affect our civilization or any civilization on the planet. So get this. Analysis of staghorn coral, because we were looking for physical evidence here. This is a coral that grows always in shallow water. Okay, it doesn't grow at depth. It's always within the first 30 feet. It provides evidence that the ocean level rose 400 feet since the end of the last ice age. And the ice age came to an abrupt end approximately 11,650 years ago. This occurred when global temperatures rose approximately 7 degrees, all of a sudden on the geographic scale, not geometric. On the timeline, it was very, very, very quickly. We're not just doing the bold, are we?
No, we're doing the whole thing.
Great. Awesome. Get our teeth stuck into this, or wherever page 12 went. There it is. In order to study the effects of the impact on civilization, let's step back in time. This is not the civilization that you read about in history books, but the thriving civilization that existed throughout the world during the last ice age. Large areas of the continents were covered in glacial ice sheets. Strong jet streams moving north-south made it difficult to grow crops and scratch out a living in many locales and environments. But some moderate and tropical areas were blessed by mountain ranges that traversed east-west that protected the region from these fierce winds. Let's say the Himalayas, the Caucasus, and the European Alps. It was in these regions, such as Cuba and the Mediterranean in India, that mankind found a niche and thrived. These shallow coastal lands were among the richest and most fertile on the earth. These protected coastlines were the sites of the largest cities and population centres. This is not much different from today, Meki, where 85% of the Earth's population and the majority of cities are within 200 miles of the coast.
Yes, correct.
It's just a different coastline. The edge of the continental shelf, for instance.
Yes. In fact, just on that very quickly, that's where we should focus our underwater archaeological efforts. We should look at the old coastlines, because the sea level is now about, I think it's 400 feet higher than it was during the Ice Age, I think it is.
Yes, right? That's right.
So let's look at the old, not just the coastline though, also the old riverbeds, the old lake shores. In fact, we're going to talk about the Black Sea in a moment as well. So that's where we should not where we are now. It's completely irrelevant to look now where we are. Let's look at where we used to be. Right? That's the key. Anyway, keep going, sir.
Meki, they would have been mountain dwellers that live where we live.
Completely.
Yeah, that's right. Because why would you live there? Getting water's too hard. So
that's right.
To them, the end came suddenly. A large comet or asteroid cut its way down to the Earth in a flash and bore through the glacial sheet. For most people, this initial event was so sudden and distant that it might go unnoticed. They would first feel the effects of the impact when a massive series of earthquakes rumbled past them. Only even if just a few minutes later.
And just very quickly, and a lot of the stories that we collated for you guys talk about a civilization being aware of this coming, and certain gods, as it were, making provisions to survive this, right? So, again, if this was in fact a celestial event and civilization was advanced enough to scan the sky, have astronomy, astrology, whatever, then clearly this is exactly what would happen.
Exactly. The cities of brick and stone would crumble about them and the top of them. Yeah? And on top of them. Yeah. If they looked to the sky, they might notice that it was beginning to take on a strange color before it finally went completely dark. Survivors would stumble around trying to free family and friends, as we all see in other earthquake-stricken towns, those people trapped in the rubble. The sea level would begin to rise at the same time that torrents of rain would begin to fall from the sky. As the hours turned into days and months, the unending deluge would lift the level of the sea by as much as 400 feet, submerging approximately 15 million square miles of coastal land around the world and drowning its inhabitants. This brought to an end the Ice Age and destroyed most traces of Ice Age civilization that came before us.
Exactly. Now, we also believe there were civilizations before the Ice Age, most of whose achievements would have been ground away by the glaciers. Right? Then the survivors of that would have gone into, I guess, into the areas that were left free of glacial ice and were destroyed by what we think happened some 12,000 years ago. It stands to reason, if you look at the globe, that a lot of the evidence for so high civilizations is in fact in warm areas around the equator. Right? You look at the pyramids, for example, or the South American civilizations.
Indonesia.
Indonesia, the Pacific, Atlantic, absolutely, right? So it is not the far north or the far south that we're looking at here. For my money, okay, I put the pre-Ice Age civilization into Antarctica, right? And in fact, that's how far back I think we go. So just to give you some kind of time frames. Now, is there any physical evidence for a great flood, might someone ask? And I'm glad that you did.
I was going to ask.
The answer, I know you will. Now, the answer is yes. And we're going to give you a little taste here. We're going to discuss this in more length further down in our paper here. So, William Scott Anderson, his research, which was published in 2001 in a book titled Solving the Mystery of the Biblical Flood, says that one of the more interesting elements in his work is that he found a proxy in diatoms that support the theory of a great flood. Okay, now what is a diatom, you ask me? Okay, a diatom, or diatoms rather, are microorganisms, a type of plankton that has a silicon shell. So a very, very tiny little creature, okay? Which are usually preserved as fossils. And as we know, 95% and maybe more of all fossils are in fact marine fossils. Mr. Anderson realized the global flood should have left a physical record in the geological strata of these tiny sea creatures. Makes sense, right? And he analyzed the strata at the boundary of the end of the last ice age, in the middle of the North American continent, in Wisconsin, and discovered the presence of ocean diatoms in the boundary layer. Right, so is there any evidence for a large impact event at the end of the last glacial period? We're going to talk about that in some detail again, because we've got some updates to this as well. So scattered along the eastern coast of the United States from southern New Jersey to northern Florida are approximately 500,000 elliptical depressions collectively called the Carolina Bays. Now I can attest to that myself because I've been to Florida recently for work, and we were staying in Orlando, and Orlando has got a multitude of little lakes all around it. When I looked at the map, I go, wow, this is crazy. And in fact, if you look at the entire map of the eastern seaboard there are so many little bays and lakes and ponds that you know beggars the mind. It just beggars belief. Now the size of these depressions range from 200 feet to 7 miles along the major axis. One of the interesting aspects of the Carolina Bays is that they occurred during recent geological time. Otherwise, the depressions would have been eroded and filled in. Any event that is capable of producing 500,000 craters, 500,000 craters, is by any definition a significant global event. I think you might agree to that. And this might just be the tip of the iceberg. Again, no pun here. Because if these impacts were not limited to the Carolina Bays, but also peppered the North American glacial mass, they would produce a massive release of water and ice. Clearly, if something is hitting you, it doesn't just hit the land, but it would hit the glacier mass that sits on top of the land. You know, and might break the dams, might increase temperatures, might speed up the melting process. It is worth noting, though, that the trajectory of the Carolina Bay impactors appeared to originate from a cometary breakup directly over the North American glacial sheet. Now, if you follow the trajectory through, you could then argue that the impact would happen either in the Pacific or Indian Ocean, potentially, right, as it rains down. Is there any evidence of a massive flood at the end of the last glacial period, Dave?
Oh, there certainly is. There's only 2 minutes left before the top of the hour. So, look, what I'll do, I'm going to show a picture of this. This is the Carolina Bays. So if anyone is, watching this on YouTube, then you'll get it. But it shows, Mekki, you're looking at it, right? It shows just looks like a shotgun blast of impact craters
Yeah, and they're oval as well. So you know they came in
at
in
an
a
angle.
trajectory. Exactly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but all of them the same trajectory, right? These are not isolated little craters, but they must have happened at the same time from the same direction.
Do you know, it's reminiscent when I look at this of the catastrophe that happened on Mars, where one whole hemisphere of the planet is peppered with stuff like this, and the other isn't.
Correct. In fact, later on, some of this evidence that we're proposing here also led us to actually figure out that there must have been massive flooding on Mars, but we get to that at some later point.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's extraordinary. It really is. And I can't wait to get to the Indian Ocean stuff later too. And we have some really cool quotes coming from the scientists that are looking at the information, and they've come to the same conclusion that we have. And I really like that. You'll love that when we get to it.
Yeah, look, we're running out of time here, so clearly we won't go any further into what we've prepared for you. But just be clear that when you do Google this and you look for global flood evidence, all the information of the debunkers is outdated. All the debunking information is completely outdated. Just remember that. And don't forget to donate!
Yeah, use that time over the break to donate. I'm going to donate $10 right now. And we'll get back to you. Short break.
Listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons. Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, your carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply, though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958, and Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome back to Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out. Show number 178, 870, and 100. We're talking about the evidence, physical evidence, not just written, physical evidence for global floods, for the global catastrophe. So if you've taken the time to donate during the break, that would have been great. If you haven't, do it now. So, get out your wallet and your credit card and see if you can donate something. It's really easy. If you're in the chat room, it's on the left-hand side, so at the sort of the upper third of the left-hand side, or you can just go to the website itself, freedomslips.com. It's easy to follow the link there. You can also purchase things if you like, right? Both of Dave's and mine, and other shows as well. Dave and I, just before we go on to the content of the show, were interviewed day before yesterday by a fellow team here, Dave, for 2 hours. We were ranting and raving for 2 hours.
That was a good show. It was a good show. That was on Keith's show.
Yeah, that was good fun. Major Tom, Keith and Major Tom.
That's right.
To ground control. So yeah, if you didn't catch it, see if you can get it on the archives. A little bit of background on Dave and myself. It was good fun though, and just to anybody out there, happy to be guests on anyone's show. Happy to rant and rave for you too.
It was a lot of fun, and thanks to Keith and Major Tom for that. We'll do it again.
We'll do it again. Which brings us to the show today. We are talking about the physical evidence for we're talking specifically about a flood that we think occurred, or an event, let's call it an event that occurred at the end. In fact, that brought about the end, in our opinion, of the last glacial period. We think that impact actually caused the end of the last ice age and wiped out the ice age civilization that was thriving at that point. Now, Dave, is there any evidence of a massive flood at the end of the last glacial period?
Oh yeah, there's heaps. Let me tell you about that, Mackie. Look, this can be found, the evidence can be found in the lake Missoula, Altai, and the Agassiz mega floods, to name a few, or to mispronounce a few. Glacial Lake Missoula, a North American inland sea, was as big as Lake Erie and Ontario combined.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. The glacial lake covered 3,000 square miles and was over 2,000 feet deep at the end of the glacial dam. The Missoula mega flood release was over 520 cubic miles of water and ice across Montana, Idaho, Montana, Idaho. What did I say? Washington.
Montana. It's all good.
No, Montana. That's a different place entirely. Yeah, I don't know where it is, but I'm sorry for all those people who live in Montana. It wasn't your town, wasn't your place. It was Montana, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. Floodwaters roared across the landscape at speeds approaching 90 miles an hour. The lake drained in as little as 48 hours. Some argue that it was caused by a massive ice dam that broke, releasing a massive flows of water and ice, and the event repeated several times. Deep in the Altai Mountains in southern Siberia, a huge ice lake 300 feet deep containing 200 cubic miles of water ruptured, sending a wall of water 1,500 feet high down the Chuga River Valley at 90 miles per hour. And, you know, the lake, the last one, Meki, what's that? How would you, Agassiz?
Lake Agassiz, yeah.
Agassiz. Mega flood in Canada was even larger than the other two. The flood released over 5,000 cubic miles of water, approximately 11,335 years ago. If these massive mega floods, along with others, were triggered simultaneously by a large comet impact, they could hypothetically generate a global flood event.
And that's really what we're trying to say here. And it's not just our theory, but some scientists have come around to believing this happened exactly this way, in fact. It makes sense. I mean, you know, it doesn't make sense any other way. I mean, how else would you explain flood stories across the globe, pinpointing a similar time or similar point in time, and also the stories that go with it? Once again, you know, the rain of fire, you know, the earthquakes, and the different modes of survival. Very, very interesting stuff. Dave,
I was going to ask you, how could the waters cover the entire Earth during the Great Flood?
now, neither Dave nor I postulate or would suggest that the entire Earth was covered by water. However, the crust of the Earth is flexible, and it does deform over geological time under redistributed weight loads, and it's happening right now. And in fact, the Antarctic as well as the Arctic are depressed shelves because of all the ice there. Now, Mr. Anderson describes this process in some detail in his book, and this is really what we're talking about here. And during the Ice Age, the weight of the ice sheets, which were miles thick, affected the shape of the world. The oceans became shallower, and the continental land masses flattened out. Now, that may be true. I still do not believe that the entire Earth was covered by water. I do believe that the entire Earth was affected by these floods and tsunamis and so forth, absolutely. But I don't think it was all covered in water for any appreciable amount of time. Certain areas were, absolutely. And the destruction was global. But I don't think that the entire planet, okay, yet again, looked like Waterworld. I really don't think so.
No, and I agree with that too.
Is there any other evidence, Dave? And this is only a fraction here. Again, we're going to have some more as we talk about this. Is there any other evidence, though, supporting a great flood or a great catastrophe of this nature?
Oh yeah, look, they're found everywhere. Massive extinctions occurred at the end of the Pliocene. Most of these are associated with large megafauna. And we know that they're found, that the following disappeared from America, Europe, and Australia. All herbivores over 1,000 kilograms, or say a ton. It's easy to work out. 75% loss of herbivores between 100 kilos and 1,000 kilos.
Yep.
We lost 41% of herbivores between 5 kilos and 100 kilos. And we only lost less than 2% of all herbivores that are less than 5 kilos. All the big ones perished, but the small ones seemed to make it through. This extinction of megafauna included woolly mammoths and mastodons, the saber-toothed tigers, because obviously they're the prey, they're the predators for the prey, Native Americans, horses and camels, giant Australian kangaroos. There was also giant wombats then too. The marsupial lion. That's what's that? Thylacoleo carnifex.
Thylacoleo carnifex. That's correct.
The largest ever marsupial, which was the 2.5-ton Diprotodon.
Very good.
Oh man, I can read them. You know, anyway. Giant Irish deer or Irish elk. The woolly rhino. That I'd like to see. I'd like to see a sheep as big as a rhino.
Me too.
The peccaries or the pecaries, the short-faced bears, as well as the armadillo-like glyptodonts, and the giant ground sloths, the Megatheridae.
Very good. That is correct. That's yeah. So we lost all the megafauna, right? I mean, you see them in books, and the survivors of this, in fact, are elephants, rhinoceros. Okay.
Well, everything that's around today survived it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, those are the ones that survived it. But the Earth was filled with animals like that. You know, the pachyderms, and so forth, and certain species of elephants like mammoths and mastodons, which are no longer about. And in fact, probably a species we don't even know of yet. Hey, maybe that's when the unicorn went extinct. I'm just saying. Don't know, right? Eagle Eye has made a good point as well. We should maybe mention at this point that these events have happened again and again and again. By these events, we're talking about the extinction level events, right? The impacts, the floods, the worldwide catastrophes. So it's a good point, Eagle Eye. Thank you very much for pointing it out yet again. That they're seemingly cyclical, right? They seem to happen on a relatively regular basis. And now I hate to say this, but we are due for yet another one. Yeah, we are overdue, I think, if you look at the cycles of destruction. Now, we've got a lot more evidence we want to go through with you guys. The next bit I'm just going to very quickly do is around the Black Sea and the comet strike we've just talked about. Okay, this comes from the website How Stuff Works. Again, that's a scientific website, not very mainstream and not fringe like Dave and I. Fringe of the fringe. So now, at present, there are two scientific theories in existence that deal with this. Okay, one suggests flooding around the area that is now the Black Sea, and the other attributing devastating floods to a comet that struck the Earth prior to that. Now, the first one we're going to look at here is the Black Sea theory, right? And this is probably the one that Noah's flood is based on to some extent. Okay, but I do believe there was a bigger one that was before that. In the late 1990s, Columbia University geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman proposed that the Great Flood in the Middle East resulted from rising water levels at the end of the last ice age about 7,000 years ago. Now, the end of the last ice age goes back much further than that, but that's okay. At that time, the Black Sea was a freshwater lake and the lands around it were farmlands. When the European glaciers melted, the Mediterranean Sea overflowed with a force 200 times greater than that of the Niagara Falls, converting the Black Sea from fresh to salt water and flooding the entire area. Now, this is interesting. National Geographic Society explorer Robert Ballard, inspired by Ryan and Pittman's hypothesis, has discovered supporting evidence, physical evidence, including an underwater river valley and ancient shoreline, as well as Stone Age structures and tools beneath the Black Sea. His team have also unearthed fossils of now extinct freshwater species dating back some 7.5 to 15,500 years ago, which is right where it should be. Now, who is Ballard, you say? Who is this Ballard, you say? I tell you who it is. Okay. In 1985, using a robotic submersible equipped with remote-controlled cameras, Ballard and his crew hunted down the world's most famous shipwreck, the Titanic. That's right, it was him. He found it. Now, while this theory is still being reviewed, Bruce Mars, an environmental archaeologist at Los Alamos National Laboratory, put forth his own theory about the Great Flood. He hypothesizes that more comets and meteors than we know have hit Earth throughout its history. Agree with that? 100%. He believes the seeds of Great Flood stories may have sprouted when a comet hit our planet about 5,000 years ago. Mars's assumption is that a 3-mile, which is about 4.8 kilometer, wide comet crashed into the ocean off the coast of what is now Madagascar. What happened? Worldwide chaos, including violent 600-foot waves, or tsunamis, massive hurricanes, superheated water vapor, and aerosol particulates shot into the jet streams. All of this terror was accompanied by a week of darkness caused by material, or even longer, who knows, expelled into the atmosphere. Mass's theory derives from clues in cultural flood myths, of course, we've shared it with you, including ancient petroglyphs, drawings, and historical records, but it's the physical evidence he's after, of course, to make the case. Since he has presented his theory in 2004, he's found support in the geological community. Okay, a 600-foot high tsunami would surely leave behind, some kind of geological calling card, and it did. When waves are generated by such a significant impact, they create wedge-shaped configurations in the sand, known as chevrons. And when the Holocene Impact Working Group went looking for them with satellite imagery, satellite imagery, we're going to talk about that a bit later as well, like Google and so forth, they were able to locate such chevron formations in Africa and Asia. Carbon dating fossils found in the chevrons will help determine if they fit within the proposed 5,000-year timeline. In my opinion, it'll go back further. It'll much better, in my opinion, once again, only will fit the 12 to 13,000-year time frame, but maybe even older. Who knows? Now, Dave, there's more evidence, though, right? There's a lot more evidence for this rapid catastrophe that can happen.
Yeah, that's right. It's called a washout, and that is, if the catastrophic model is correct, then naturally there should be an abundance of evidence for catastrophic washouts, and this is indeed the case. There, we have a great picture there of the same kind of washout. The vast canyons, valleys, and hills relics of the world and the remnants of vast inland water systems that we find in various places all favour catastrophic rather than uniformitarian formation. Geologists have been forced to admit to catastrophic formation of some of the great landscape scars that occur on every continent, and in many cases, geologists have even had to have their definitions and concept of land formation proven questionable. Okay, so we've got the Bryce Canyon. And I think that the Bryce Canyon flood is interesting because it includes those the eddies from a sudden washout rather than millions of years of slow. You know, they talk about that with Meki with the Grand Canyon. Correct. But the Bryce Canyon is what they found in Mars. They found a Mars canyon that looked exactly the same as that of the Bryce Canyon.
Yes, sir.
There's also recent rapid washout in Kanab Creek. Only recently, geologists have finally accepted that the great dry falls of the Columbia River are a catastrophic origin. The goosenecks of the Colorado River too have had their explanation of origins modified. Fast erosion is known to give a V-shaped channel, while slow erosion in a meandering riverbed tends to have undercutting on the outer circumference of the bend and deposition on the inner circumference. I know that. Yeah. Both features are distinctly visible in the gooseneck, showing that two different mechanisms have contributed to the formation of the channel. Also, the claim that meandering rivers are all slow moving has been proven to be unsubstantiated by the huge canyon formed at Kanab Creek in a few hours during a recent flood.
That's one of your favorite stories, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well. Yes. So, now, Meki, these things aren't isolated to those two locations, though. And I'm going to ask you a question. Meki, you ready?
I'm ready, sir.
Assuming the Earth was struck by a large impactor, where is the iridium evidence?
Well, that's a good question. And then why iridium? Because iridium is the material that would have been generated or left behind by this. Now, the answer is, of course, unfortunately, at the bottom of the ocean, because a global flood would have washed away the thin dust layer of iridium. And again, core samples should prove that it's there. Okay, so that's the answer to that one, guys. Very good question, though, Dave. Very informed question.
do you know what? That's found at the boundary layer at 65 million years ago.
Yep.
Iridium is found in great quantities there. Okay, so that's why they're so concerned about it being a deposit.
Now, at this point, I think it is important to understand where the scientific community is and where we are, because still the scientific community believes in uniformitarianism. So what is catastrophism then? Which is what we're proposing here. Catastrophism is the theory that many of Earth's crustal features, such as strata layers, erosion, polystrate fossils, and so forth, formed as a result of sudden, short-lived, violent events, and which were possibly worldwide in scope. That's catastrophism, right? Now, the dominant paradigm, though, of today's modern geology is uniformitarianism, sometimes described as gradualism, meaning everything happens slowly. Yeah, erosion, to create the Earth as we see it today. And I want to quickly tell you why that is. During the last century, in the 19th century, I should say, there was a conflict between the church and the scientific community, and dogmatic positions were taken up. So whatever the church said held to be truthful, right, like the flood, catastrophe and so forth, had to be wrong. So the scientific community had to come up with the stance that was diametrically opposed to whatever religion believed.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we've become, I guess, frozen in certain belief systems, frozen in certain scientific mindsets, and this gradualism, this uniformitarianism is one of them. Okay, evolution is another, but you need to retain flexibility if you're a scientist, guys. You need to retain it. Now,
Meki, the other thing about this was that the church has always it said that the Earth is a lot younger.
yes.
And so the other counter argument to the younger thing is this, gradual change over millions of years. Of course, the Bible doesn't suggest anything to do with millions. It doesn't have millions in it. Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't. You're right. In fact, the Bishop Usher, this is my favorite little calculation. He calculated the Earth, the age of the Earth to be 6,000 years. So it was actually the Earth was created on a Thursday afternoon at I think 4 p.m. in the year 4004 BC.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the month, but it was definitely a Thursday afternoon. So it's quite interesting. Now, the view holds, of course, that the present is the key to the past, and that all things continue as they were from the beginning of the world. I think we have proven that this is not the case, and I think we've also proven this in our shows on dating, both relative and absolute. The three key assumptions around that, and they're flawed. I mean, I'm sorry, they're flawed. They're not truth. They're just assumptions and theories. Now, catastrophism, of course, is the opposite to uniformitarianism, and it states that things happen very, very quickly, cataclysmically, if you will. Right? Things are changing in the blink of an eye, and we know this can happen because we know the Earth has been impacted by comets, meteors. I know there have been supervolcanic eruptions like Krakatoa in the historical record. We know Tunguska happened. We don't know what happened, but we know something happened to Tunguska. Okay? We know Surtsey happened. Surtsey is an island that just popped out of the North Sea. Okay? We know a whole bunch of these things happened. So we do know that this is a feature of the evolution, if you will, of the geology of the Earth. I mean, I'm sure there are gradual processes. Of course there are. But there are also catastrophic processes. Now, James Hutton, excuse me, first proposed the doctrine of uniformity in his publication, The Theory of the Earth, in 1785. Yeah. Uniformitarianism and the geological column, both of which assume uniformity, have been disproved in recent years by geological features such as polystrata fossils, misplaced fossils, missing layers, and misplaced layers, including layers in reverse order, or ancient layers found above modern layers. We've spoken about this in some detail. Furthermore, observed cataclysmic events such as the eruption of Mount St. Helens. That's what I just didn't mention, right? Recently, a more inclusive and integrated view of geological events has developed, changing the scientific consensus to accept some catastrophic events in the geologic past. Now, if you've got a huge crater, you can't really argue that away. I'm sorry. It's just
Don't know how it happened. Must have been over a long period of time.
long.
Yeah, long.
Real slow.
long.
Right?
Yeah.
It's funny. Now, this held that there have been violent and sudden natural catastrophes such as great floods and the rapid formation of major mountain chains. In fact, the Himalayas is still forming. Plants and animals living in those parts of the world where such events occurred were often killed, and very suddenly and very quickly as well, according to 19th century French scientist Georges Cuvier, and to David Mackey as well. Then new life forms moved in from other areas, and as a result, the fossil record for a given region shows abrupt changes in species. Okay? Now, Cuvier relied solely on scientific evidence, not on biblical interpretation. Now, what is the empirical evidence, Dave, for catastrophism?
Well, it's supported by actual recorded history. That's the big difference. Nearly 300 ancient flood legends have survived the ravishment of time, as we've read out in previous shows. Legends of a worldwide deluge, commonly known as the Noachian flood, are found in Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, North America, and South America. Furthermore, Earth's sedimentary layers with the fossil record seem to suggest a past marine cataclysm. Sedimentary rock, sandstone, siltstone, shale, limestone, etc., is the result of moving water laid down layer upon layer by hydraulic sorting. And we explained that as well. Animals whose fossil remains are found within these layers must have been caught in this running water to have been buried and preserved, as we know that fossils don't occur readily. It's only certain circumstances. The remains, as well as the rocks, would be sorted according to density. Otherwise, the carcasses would rot, or be scavenged. So they have to be completely covered up in low oxygen environments. Approximately 95% of the Earth's fossils remains discovered thus far are marine invertebrates, as Meki, my esteemed co-host, mentioned at the top of the hour. Of the remainder, approximately 4.74% are plant fossils. Only 0.25% are land invertebrates, including insects. And, are you ready for this one? 0.0125% are vertebrates, the majority of which are fish.
Yeah.
Roughly 95% of land vertebrates discovered and recorded to date consist of less than one bone.
Yeah. That puts the fossil record in some perspective, doesn't it?
Do you know what? You're led to believe that there's fossils everywhere, Meki, and there are all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But they're not.
No. In fact, the fossil record really hasn't borne out much yet for us. It has thrown up a lot more controversy, which is not being addressed by the scientific establishment, which is fine, I guess. I would just like to just very quickly to the chat room, because we still got a lot of time. Bernard is saying, I don't know if we are deceiving you or if someone is being deceived. So, and he also said that contradictions prove nothing. Okay, I like to understand what Bernard means, please. Is Bernard saying that we are lying to you guys? Well, the truth is no. It took us a lot of time to compile this information. You can do it yourself if you like. None of what we've told you here is a lie. None of it is made up. This is the evidence the way we presented it, and with our theory around it. I think we're entitled to that. And this is, again, not just our theory either. Okay, the scientific community has come to consensus that these catastrophic events happened, and I think the legends, as they exist, bear out the fact that humanity has experienced some cataclysmic event in the past. I would say many, and which probably has destroyed a civilization that went before us. I mean, ruins of which we can still find across the globe. The megalithic builders, the people that moved 1,000-ton stone blocks, those guys, right? So I would like to understand what you mean, Bernard. I'm open to criticism. I'm happy for you to dial in and voice your opinion as well, if that's what you would like to do.
Sure.
But yeah, so I need to understand how we're deceiving and whom, because the information we're presenting you is readily available to anyone. No,
Meki, this part of the information I love the most.
Please go ahead.
Meki, can you tell me about the Burkle crater?
Okay, I will do it then for you, sir. Certainly. Now, the Burkle crater is an undersea feature hypothesized to be an impact crater by the Holocene Impact Working Group. Okay, they consider that it likely was formed by very large scale and relatively recent, between roughly about 5,000 years ago, comet or meteorite impact event. It is estimated, now the difference between a comet and meteorite is a comet is largely made up of water, okay, frozen waters and so forth, and meteorite is largely made up of iron, rock and so forth. Okay, so that's the difference between those two. It is estimated to be about 30 kilometers in diameter, which is about 18 miles, which is gigantic, and hence about 20 times larger than Arizona's Meteor Crater. I don't know if you've seen a picture of that, guys. It's pretty cool. It's a massive crater in Arizona. It is east of Madagascar and west of Western Australia in the southern Indian Ocean, adjacent to the southwest Indian Ocean ridge. Now, its position was determined in 2006 by the same group using evidence of its existence from prehistoric chevron dune formations in Australia and Madagascar that allowed them to triangulate its location. We've just spoken about the chevron formations, and you know now what those are. But the theory that these chevron dunes are due to tsunamis was, or rather has been challenged by geologist Jody Bourgeois and R. Weiss, Using a computer model to simulate a tsunami, they argue that the structures are more consistent with Aeolian processes.
Except the fact that there's a huge crater, and that if a 28 mile, sorry, if a however, there'd be a tsunami anyway. So I think those people are foolish to go against it, but you know that's what they want.
And look, guys, again, this is very important. Okay, neither Dave nor I have the key to the truth. We just don't. Some truth, not the truth. So what we present you with are thought models. Okay, these are theories that are put forward by serious people looking at serious evidence. Okay, and to us, I have to say, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, other people will dispute these findings, and that's cool too, right? But there's more. We have more. Okay. The formation, in fact. Now, the key thing here is that the Burckle crater has not yet been dated by radiometric analysis of its sediments. And I still believe that it will show us an age of around 12 to 13,000 years. That's my
Agreed.
Yep. Now, the Holocene Impact Working Group, which we just mentioned, think that it was created about 5,000 years ago, right? Again, during the Holocene epoch.
It generated enormous mega tsunamis.
Correct, which created the dune formations, which then allowed them to pinpoint the crater. In fact, the crater we can share with you. I think Dave has got a Google image of that.
Yeah, I'll bring it up.
Yep, unusual calcite crystals, translucent carbon spherules, fragments of basaltic glass, and native metals, native iron and nickel, are reported near the crater and associated with impact ejecta or hot water precipitates. Seawater at the depth of the crater is undersaturated with respect to calcite, and rapid burial would be needed to preserve those crystals. Okay, so otherwise they would have just dissolved in the water. That's what they're saying here. So they would have had to be rapidly buried in the water in the ocean bed for them to be preserved up to this point. Now, this is a recent article we found, and we're going to share a few of them now with you, and Dave is going to share them with us. This is a recent news article, okay, that we took from, in fact, www.spacedaily.com, which is another scientific webpage. So, Dave, what is this article about the deep impact here?
Okay, comprehensive analysis of the impact spherules supports the theory of a cosmic impact about 12,800 years ago. This is by staff writers, Santa Barbara, California, May 27, 2013. The researchers studied the impact spherules in 18 sites in 9 countries on 4 continents for this study. About 12,000, this is what they say, about 12,800 years ago, when the Earth was warming and emerging from the last ice age, a dramatic anomalous event occurred that abruptly reversed climatic conditions back to a near glacial state. According to James Kennett, UC Santa Barbara, emeritus professor in earth science, this climate switch fundamentally and remarkably occurred in only 1 year, heralding the offset of the Younger Dryas cool episode. The cause of this cooling has been much debated, especially because it's closely coincided with the abrupt extinction and majority of the large animals then inhabiting the Americas, as well as the disappearance of prehistoric Clovis culture known for its big game hunting.
Yep.
And I'm going to quote here, I've got a couple of quotes. What then did cause the extinction of most of these big animals, including mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, American camel and horse, and the saber-toothed cats? Asked Kennett, pointing to Charles Darwin's 1845 assessment of the significance of climate change. Did these extinctions result from human overkill, climatic change, or some catastrophic event? The long debate that followed, Kennett noted, has recently been stimulated by a growing body of evidence in support of a theory that a major cosmic impact event was involved, a theory proposed by the scientific team that includes Kennett himself. he wasn't alone. Now, in one of the most comprehensive related investigations ever, the group has documented a wide distribution of microspherules, widely distributed in a layer over 50 million square kilometers on 4 continents, including North America, Arlington Canyon, and Santa Rosa Island in the Channel Islands. This layer, the Younger Dryas boundary, the YDB layer, also contains peak abundances of other exotic materials, including nanodiamonds and other unusual forms of carbon, such as, this will be hard, ferrolenus, as well as melt glass iridium.
Sorry, that was fullerenes.
Fullerenes, I don't know how to say it. I'll know how to say it now. This new evidence is in support of the cosmic impact theory, which appeared recently in a paper in Proceedings of the National Academy of the Sciences. This cosmic impact, said Kennett, caused major environmental degradation over wide areas through numerous processes that include continent-wide wildfires and a major increase in atmospheric dust load that blocked the sun long enough to cause starvation of larger animals. Wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
Investigating 18 sites across North America, Europe, and the Middle East, Kennett and 28 colleagues from 24 institutions analysed the spherules, tiny spheres formed by the high temperature melting of rocks and soils that then cooled and quenched rapidly in the atmosphere. The process results from enormous heat and pressures in blasts generated by the cosmic impact, somewhat similar to those produced during atomic explosions, Kennett explained. But spherules, Meki, do not form from cosmic collisions alone. Volcanic activity, lightning strikes, coal seam fires, and all can create the tiny spheres. So, to differentiate between the impact spherules and those formed by other processes, the research team utilized scanning electron microscopy and energy dispersive spectrometry on nearly 700 spherule samples collected from the YDB layer.
Wow.
The YDB layer also corresponds with the end of the Clovis age and is commonly associated with other features such as an overlying black mat, a thin, dark carbon-rich sedimentary layer, as well as the youngest known Clovis archaeological material and megafaunal remains, and abundant charcoal that indicates massive biomass burning resulting from impact. The results, according to Kennett, are compelling. Examinations of the YDB spherules revealed that while they are consistent with the type of sediment found on the surface of the Earth in their areas at the time of impact, they are geochemically dissimilar from volcanic materials, which is interesting. Tests on their remnant magnetism, the remaining magnetism after the removal of electric or magnetic influence, also demonstrated that the spherules could not have formed naturally during lightning strikes. Meki, take it. I'm getting tired.
Certainly. No worries, dude. Just thank you very much for sharing that. And guys, just to reiterate what have just been said, we have now got very hard scientific evidence for an impact event around the time we postulated earlier. In fact, before we postulated this time before this scientific evidence became available, right? Just based on the mythological record. Now, to quote further, because requisite formation temperatures for the impact spherules are greater than 2,200 degrees Celsius, this finding precludes all but a high temperature cosmic impact event as a natural formation mechanism for melted silica and other minerals, is what Kennett explained. Experiments by the group have for the first time demonstrated that silica-rich spherules can also form through high temperature incineration of plants, such as oaks, pines and reeds, because these are known to contain biologically formed silica. Additionally, according to the study, of these guys, the surface textures of these spherules are consistent with high temperatures and high velocity impacts. High velocity, important, okay? and they're often fused to other spherules. An estimated 10 million metric tons of impact spherules were deposited across 9 countries in the 4 continents studied. So this was a very large field study, guys. However, the true breadth of the YDB strewn field is unknown, indicating an impact of major proportions. Okay, so even though we've investigated 9 countries in 4 continents, this may only scratch the surface of the actual strewn field. Kenneth further goes on to say that based on geochemical measurements and morphological observations, this paper offers compelling evidence to reject alternate hypotheses that YDB spherules formed by volcanic or in fact human activity from the ongoing natural accumulation of space dust, lightning strikes, or by slow geochemical accumulation in sediments. The evidence, in fact, go on. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I've got the picture up. So, and I'm circling with the mouse where the impact crater
great.
is. Yep.
Great. Now, the evidence, in fact, continues to point to a major cosmic impact as the primary cause for the tragic loss of nearly all of the remarkable American large animals that had survived the stresses of the many Ice Age periods, only to be knocked out quite recently by this catastrophic event. And quite recently, we're talking 12, 13, 14, 15,000 years ago, which is quite recent. This is not some crackpot fringe site we took this information from. This, as you can see, this is a very detailed, large-scale study that was undertaken. Okay, in complete support to our theory here that we're proposing. Not just our theory, but a theory that was proposed by a number of other people over time as well. Excuse me. Now, the next article, and we still have time, which is great, was taken. I'm going to start, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dave.
Sure.
When I get tired. It was taken from Discover magazine. You might be familiar with the Discover magazine. It's again another magazine that it's more popular in its nature, but certainly doesn't delve into the fringe as Dave and I do. Biblical type floods are real, and they're absolutely enormous. This is the title of the article, which was published August 29, 2012, by David R. Montgomery. This is the little blurb at the front. Geologists long rejected the notion that cataclysmic floods had ever occurred, until one of them found proof of a Noah-like catastrophe in the widely eroded river valleys of Washington State. Now, this is the gentleman himself speaking in the first person now. After teaching geology at the University of Washington for a decade, I had become embarrassed that I hadn't yet seen the deep canyons where tremendous ice age flows scoured down into solid rock to sculpt the scab lands. So I decided to help lead a field trip for students to see the giant erosion scars on the local landforms. Now, something very, very important in this first paragraph: a lot of scientists and academia never get out into the world. This is something that Tesla bemoaned as well. Tesla was a doer, not a theoretician necessarily, okay? Theory is great. Practice is better, guys. Okay? Theory is good. Practice is better. We drove across the Columbia River, this is again him speaking, and continued eastward, dropping into Moses Coulee, a canyon with vertical walls of layered basalt. Okay? We gathered the students on a small rise and asked them how the canyon had formed. They immediately ruled out wind and glaciers. The valley was not U-shaped, like a typical glacial valley, and none of us could imagine how wind might gouge a canyon out of hard basalt. Given enough time, I'm sure it could. But neither were there rivers or streams. Okay? After a while, I pointed out that we were standing on a pile of gravel. I asked how the rounded granite pebbles came to be there when the closest source of granite lay over the horizon. So, at least 30 kilometers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Silence. Hiking through eastern Washington canyons, littered with exotic boulders, is a standard field trip for beginning geologists. It takes a while to register what you actually see. Again, this is him speaking, I'm quoting here. Okay? A dry waterfall, hundreds of feet high in the middle of the desert. Giant potholes where no river flows today. Granite boulders parked in a basalt canyon. Gradually, the contradictions fall into place and a story unfolds for him. Where did wayward boulders the size of a car or a house come from? Okay, they're called erratics. We've spoken about them.
That's right.
They're called the erratics. Now, what was the source of the water that moved them around and carved the faults? Today, even novice geologists can conjure up eastern Washington's giant floods. Long before the discovery of the Scablands, geologists dismissed the role of catastrophic floods in interpreting European geology. By the end of the 19th century, such ideas not only were out of fashion, but were geological heresy. When J. Harlan Bretz uncovered evidence, it is right, of giant floods in eastern Washington in the 1920s, it took most of the 20th century for other geologists to believe him. So another 80 years. Geologists, had so thoroughly vilified the concept of great floods that they could not believe it when somebody actually found evidence of one. I added the emphasis to the text in case you look at our show notes. It's in red and underlined. Okay. Now, this is going to a point we made earlier. The scientific community had to establish a line in the sand. They had to build the barricades against religion. Therefore, flood geology or catastrophic flood geology had to be dismissed because it was unscientific. It wasn't the Bible. Therefore, it had to be wrong. You have to open your mind, all of you scientists out there. You got to work with everything you have. Anyway, Bretz was a classical field geologist and a controversial figure throughout his career. Again, he was a guy that went out and did stuff. Theory is good, practice is better. I know I'm talking about that a lot. In 1925, he presented the story of the region's giant floods, seeing what others at first could not and then would not see. He spent his lifetime piecing together the story of how a raging wall of water hundreds of feet high roared across eastern Washington, carving deep channels before cascading down the Columbia River gorge as a wall of water high enough to turn Oregon's Willamette Valley into a vast backwater lake. Bretz found exotic granite boulders perched on basalt cliffs hundreds of feet above the highest recorded river level. Hundreds of feet. In the Scablands, a desolate region stripped of soil, he came across dry waterfalls and potholes hundreds of feet above the modern river. Gigantic gravel bars deposited within dry valleys implied deep, fast-flowing water. Streamlined hills rose like islands, extending more than 100 feet above the scoured-out channelways, Dave. What did he realize?
He realized that the chaotic landscape had been carved by an enormous flood that chewed deep channels through hundreds of feet of solid basalt. The ancient flood deposited an enormous delta around Portland, Oregon, backing up flow into the Willamette Valley. The waters, he eventually realized, could have come from a catastrophic drainage of Lake Missoula, an ancient glacier-dammed lake in western Montana. Not Montana. Bretz was ridiculed until 1940 when geologist Joe Pardee described giant ripple marks on the bed of Lake Missoula. The 50-foot high ripples, he said, were formed by fast-flowing currents and not by the sluggish bottom water of a lake. We've all seen that in very low tidal outsurges. Only sudden failure of the glacial dam could have released the 2,000-foot deep lake. The catastrophic release of 600 cubic miles of water through a narrow gap would sweep away everything in its path. In 1979, when Bretz was 97 years old, the Geological Society of America awarded him its highest honor, the Penrose Medal.
He didn't have to wait long, did he?
No, his entire career. Oh, it's over already. His career was over. Recognition of the Missoula flood helped other geologists identify, similar landforms in Asia, Europe, Alaska, and America's Midwest, as well as on Mars, like I said earlier. There is now compelling evidence for many gigantic ancient floods where glacial ice dams failed time and again. At the end of the last glaciation, my tongue's going to put it back in here. Glaciation, some 10,000 years ago, giant ice dam lakes in Eurasia and North America repeatedly produced huge floods. In Siberia, rivers spilled over drainage divides and changed their courses. England's fate as an island was sealed by erosion from glacial floods that carved the English Channel. Wow, that's very interesting. Since devastating floods were a fact of life on the margins of the world's great ice sheets, people in those areas probably witnessed them. You think? The early missionaries in Western Washington, yeah, I think so too. Washington reported stories of a great flood among the Yakima and Spokane tribes who could identify locations where survivors sought refuge. Wow. An Ojibwa Indian legend from around Lake Superior tells of a great snow that fell one September at the beginning of time. A bag contained the sun's heat until a mouse nibbled a hole in it. The warmth spilled over, melting the snow and producing a flood that rose above the tops of the highest pines. Everyone drowned except for an old man who drifted about in his canoe rescuing animals. The native inhabitants of the Willamette Valley told stories of a time the valley was filled with water, forcing everyone to flee up a mountain before it receded.
Now, just on that point, on the very last point that Dave made there, that goes to show you how long folk stories survive. We know that the filling up of the Willamette Valley happened some 10, 12,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm. The story survived.
Yeah. So these stories survive, and by being relayed from I don't know, one shaman to the next trainee shaman or whatever, storyteller, usually in some kind of pentameter, some kind of rhyme, some kind of meter that makes it easy to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the Nordic Vedas and anything before we started writing stuff down. And it's amazing how accurately people remember stuff if they don't have the written word to help them. There have been studies done which show that your memory is a lot better if you can't write it down. Okay, if you've got no other means of remembering anything, you will remember it. And people are being trained again today in these kind of techniques.
Mm-hmm.
So we cannot dismiss these stories. Okay, guys, we cannot dismiss the mythology that was handed down, which goes back thousands of years. I mean, fairy tales, songs, even the lullabies. They could go back, at least the melody,
Mm-hmm.
go back thousands of years. The words might have changed, and they
Mm-hmm.
change today. Today, they're familiar songs, but different languages, different countries will take the melody and then put their own words to it. So, just bear in mind that you can't dismiss any of these things as they come down to us. Now, we don't have much more time to...
Conclusions.
Yeah. Do you want to do that next week?
I think we might. We've only got a minute.
Yeah, I know. So we have another article to share, then we've got conclusions, and then, because it's fun, we want to let you know what the critics think, the debunkers, and how much time they spend on these things, which I think are completely nonsense.
Yeah, completely. So you know what? All I'm going to say is, look here, there's the music.
Ooh,
Already. Oh my goodness.
that was fast.
It sure was. Join us next week for show 179. That's what it's going to be. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you know what to find now. All right, so keep your eyes out on the website for the show notes, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone. Oh, and by the way, Jer Bear has a roundtable coming up next. You'll probably want to join in. Talking about Jade Helm.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
I think so. Take care.